Arrington's, I know him. Derek Owens was another one. And listen,
Right.
everybody's health is their own. I've suffered, well, you know what, I'm not even going to put the number out there, but let me just say that it's more than a handful of diagnosed concussions over my life, as you guys hear. Now, I may get a little ADD from time, and I may even occasionally slur a word or two, but for the most part, I'm okay. I'm good to go, and I can tell you that I have definitely had my brain diagnosed as being knocked around more times than I care to admit. But so sometimes I question when I hear statements like, Derek Owens says he suffered a handful of concussions playing football, and he could no longer remember anything that he studied in school. His symptoms were so severe he had to drop out. He felt like a 22-year-old with Alzheimer's. I'm not saying that is not true. I don't know this guy. I've never met him. I don't know him. I'm not saying that is not true. I'm not calling him a liar or anything, but I find that very difficult to believe. I mean, just being honest with you, that to me sounds a lot more like a guy who didn't want to go to school anymore and found a way to potentially get paid for the rest of his life for it. But, so I do. I sometimes I question those kind of things, but we're not even talking about that. This is about the settlement, but that's just my honest opinion. And again, everybody's brain is different. He could very well be legitimate, and I could be an ass here for calling him out on it. But I just go, man, that stuff like that is fishy to me. But hey, you know what? The NCAA has more money than they know what to do with. They print that stuff so they can give it to the guys who break their backs to play the games. I don't care. I'm fine with that.
Well, I don't have a problem with that so much, Jerry. My thing is, how many concussions is a handful? Okay? Now,
True.
I've had 4, and none of them came from playing sports, unfortunately. I've had 4. One is the result of a car accident, and 3 others are involving my military service. And
wow. See,
I know that there are times...
Go ahead. I was just going to say, I wasn't even thinking about outside of sports. I was simply thinking about sports, and I'm at double your number. But go ahead.
But, well, and so you know what I'm talking about, because I know that there are days, and I'm a little older than you, but I know there are days where I don't remember what I did yesterday, and I have to really think back. And, I keep saying to my wife, there's something wrong, and now she finally agrees with me after all these years. She says, you know what, maybe you are losing your mind, and that may not be such a bad thing either.
You know what? Hey, while we're talking about it, I've never told this, but you guys know that I've got no problem sharing, my personal life with you guys too. I actually had a very, very bad situation a few years ago involving concussions. It really caused me to, for a couple of years, cut my wrestling career pretty much down to nothing. I'm just now. And it's funny because my friends go, yeah, that's because you haven't been doing it, so of course you feel good. But let me tell you what happened. I flew down to Dallas, Texas, and I did a week-long, they had a thing, it was a tournament. It was just, anyways, it was this big blown-up thing, and I went down there and competed, and I wrestled, was it 10 matches in 5 days. I had one day where I wrestled 4 times in one day, and I ended up suffering. I get dropped on my head early in this thing, but because I had so much stuff to do in such a short period of time, I just kept moving. Hey, man, it's what we do. And so I ended up suffering at least one more that we know of concussion during the next couple of days, which wouldn't have been so bad. Where I screwed up was I didn't go to the hospital. Instead, I went to the hotel room, packed up my stuff, and at 5 o'clock in the morning, I got on my cross-country flight to come back to Cleveland, Ohio. Biggest mistake I could have ever made. When I got back, I had blinding headaches, and my eyes were completely sensitive to light. For the next 2 weeks, I had to go to work at my radio station with sunglasses on and lay low, lights off in the room and stuff. It was a very, very, very... I was supposed to, not go to work for a month because the screens, computers, everything. I ended up with post-concussion syndrome. Flying was what did it. Apparently, when you suffer multiple concussions, it's bad enough. When you immediately get in a plane and go to high distances and fly across the country, it just blew my symptoms way out of the way. And, I mean, I would say I could use the word debilitated for the first couple of months. I mean, it was bad. It started to get better. And, it was a year. It was 10 months before I even stepped foot in a wrestling ring again. And then I wrestled once, twice, 3 times a year for the last couple of years, just because I did easy stuff because my kids like it and they like to go see me do it. But it was bad. So, I mean, but, you know, that's a serious set of circumstances. But, I mean, I've got no problem saying a lot of times when I talk about this stuff, I'm not just talking about something that I'm reading about. This is something that I've dealt with for real in my life. So I'm definitely familiar with the truth of it, too, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that it's very good that the NFL got together with the U.S. Army and the U.S. Marine Corps, and they're working together on ways to limit concussions in both football and in combat. I know two of mine happened directly in combat, and unfortunately, that's the way it is. And like you said, it's what we do. We step out and do what we have to do every day, for whatever the cause is. In your case, it was to show people that you can do it. In my case, I had a Patriot Jones going on for a long time.
That's right.
Not so much now these days, but, in my younger years, I was a wild flag waver. I still am to a certain degree, though.
Hey, I'm with you, man. That's the one thing. Hey, Brandon Whedon, American flag, suit, flag, 4th of July picture. Everybody makes fun of it, but that's the one thing I respect about him. I go, hey, anybody willing to wear the flag and look that goofy, I'm with that picture. The rest of it, not so much. But yeah, my hat off to you for that, to everybody. Big soft spot for those that serve. But I don't even know how this conversation went this way. Had no intention. Maybe it's because of the concussions. I had no intention of talking about concussions, but bam, we did. Football is what causes concussions, and it's what started this week. So as we speak, some people are dealing with concussions right now around the league. Anything interesting that you've seen in the first week here of stories coming out of training camps around the league? And that's not necessarily just in Cleveland.
Well, but I'll start with Cleveland first. I think that it's really impressive that a couple of guys have said, that Brian Hoyer looks a little bit like Tom Brady these days. That's not a bad thing, as long as he looks like the Brady of 5 years ago and not the Brady of last year in the playoffs. It's not a bad thing.
He went there.
He's making his right. He's making his reads. He's finding his receivers, and he's avoiding getting sacked. And that's three things you need a quarterback to do on a consistent basis. Now, what I am worried about, and this is something that the fans have to really come to an understanding with, is that it's still only the first week of camp. And as good as these guys look the first couple of days of camp, it may not look as good a few weeks from now in the dog days of August.
Absolutely.
And, folks are just going to have to hang with it until Labor Day and see how it breaks, because that's what training camp's all about.
Well, you started there, so let's go there, because I was going to bring it up at some point anyway. Yesterday after practice, Joe Thomas talking to the media, talking about things that are going on, and yes, he used the quote that Dr. Football just laid out there. He used the Tom Brady comparison to Brian Hoyer. And let me start. Matter of fact, as I see Ron Graham running the Twitter account here, I've seen some tweets. Several people have made this point that I'm about to make. I've been there and seen it myself. Those of you that have been out there too, the fan reaction at training camp has not been what the media would have told you that it was going to be, because from day one, and I don't just mean on Saturday, but from Saturday through Sunday till, through the last 2 days I haven't been there yesterday and today, but I know people that have, the reception difference in the way that, towards Hoyer and Manziel. You'd have thought that there was going to be 5,000 people wearing number 2 jerseys down there, and that really has not been the case. And I've said this on the air, and I've said it off the air. And I was telling somebody this morning, I like a lot of the stuff that I've seen out of John Manziel, but I mean, anybody that has gone down there and seen training camp so far will say, man, that kid's the future. But he's really not the now. And you can see such a difference. Dan Wismar brought that up yesterday, that the best thing that the Browns did was just let those guys go out there and play, because it just showed everybody why. It's not like the Browns were doing this to spite their face. They weren't cutting off their nose. They were telling you what they knew that you didn't know. But, but to see that word, and I got to tell you, I mentioned it yesterday, watching Brian Hoyer, and I don't just mean the way he threw the ball. And again, I still think the Indians, looking at an email from the Indians, I still think the Browns are going to win, 6, 7, 8 games this season. But, so I'm not building the Hoyer statue, as people like to say, but I told you yesterday, that's a different Brian Hoyer than he was last year. That that is a more confident, a more mature, a leader. I'm telling you, and that's what it is. Is last year this wasn't his team. He was just catching on and finding a spot and all of that stuff. He's acting like this is his team, and I think that's what Joe Thomas meant when he brought up Tom Brady. But I'm telling you, in every way, he looks like a clone of Tom Brady in training camp, as far as how he talks to the players, how they react to him, how he's right up on front on everything. And as I said, his leadership was very, very obvious, the difference. So, but I was shocked because Joe Thomas, for the most part, is pretty reserved at what he says as far as making crazy, crazy statements. So when he dropped the Brady bomb, I said, man, but really, guys, and talk to the players. I know a lot of you guys don't get the chance to do that, but if you talk to the players, not on camera, just, hey, man, how you doing, blah, 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 this drill, that drill. Man, Brian Hoyer has completely convinced that locker room that he is the guy to lead them on the field this season. This is not coming from a fan. This is not coming from the media. The locker room, Brian Hoyer's their guy. I'm just telling you guys.
And I think it's very, it's a very good move that they signed this Marlon Moore, who I saw quite a bit of Fresno State. Yeah, he's got good hands. He's not a 6'4" guy. He's a 6-foot guy. He's not a super speed burner. He has some speed, but primarily it's his cuts. It's the way that he shifts, his direction that frustrates, NFL defensive backs. And, I'm disappointed that he never, made it caught on with the Dolphins. I really thought he would have been, one of the three primary receivers for them. I was really excited what he did last year with the 49ers. I thought he would have stuck around there. But, this is a good thing for Cleveland. He's another experienced wide receiver. Again, he's not a Josh Gordon, but he is a Marlon Moore. He's got great hands. Okay?
And I'll tell you what.
When he remembers to run the right route, he's got great hands.
I'll tell you, I'm with you, man. I've heard some decent things about him. It's another body in camp, another guy in the pile. But looking at the top of that pile, first couple days I wasn't sure, man, how things were going with the wide receivers. But I talked to somebody who I really trust that has been there for the last 2 days that I haven't. Miles Austin, beginning to separate himself a bit as far as showing, at least early in camp, with just beginning to put pads on, that he's still got a little bit left that made him what he was. Some people, and myself included, still not sure what when we signed him. I went so far as to say I don't know if he makes the team because of the hamstring issues that he's had. But from what I hear, he's just now really starting to get into a separation a bit from the other ones. And you look at him and you go, well, I can see why he was able to do these things. So I think that's something, Nate Burleson, but Andrew Hawkins has looked really, really, I would say if you had to pick an MVP of the first portion of the first week here, it would be him. He's really been all over the place making plays. And, Josh Gordon out there practicing too, but that will come to an end here at the end of this week. We talked about the opportunity, but yeah, Hawkins early on, but Burleson and Miles Austin, I think that obviously, you don't replace Josh Gordon, but I think that the Browns wide receivers, if they build off of Cameron as your primary guy, these other guys are gonna play. I don't think that the receiving core is going to be as much of a weakness as people think. I'm not sitting here telling you that there's a bunch of 1,500 receivers on this bad boy. I'm just saying that this receiving core is more competent than last year's, that's for sure.
It's also more balanced, and that's the thing. You're not expecting Josh Gordon to do as much because he's not there. Obviously, you've got four guys that are balanced. If all four of them do, in fact, make the team and get significant playing time, I would love to see Austin and Moore on the field at the same time on the outsides, because that would just cause a defensive secondary fits. I know if I were a defensive coordinator and I had to face those two guys, I'd call a timeout.
I know a lot of people, so you're obviously, this is the second time you brought him up. You're definitely high on the prospect. You think Moore's going to make this squad?
I think so. I think it's going to be very close, but I think at the end of the day, when you get down to the end of the month of August, he's going to be in a Browns uniform come the first week of the regular season. What happens health-wise and whether or not, because he's always had these little minor nagging injuries that have kept him, he's only had 2 starts in 5 years, okay? He's played in 43 games, but he's only had 2 starts in 5 years. And, people would say, well, if he's so great with a 16-yard average per catch, why isn't he playing more? Because he has these nagging things with his hamstring